Well, welcome everyone. This is our initial Industrial Automation Roundtable, and we're kicking it off today with Automation Talent 101, Culture Counts. I'm Tim Finnerty, shareholder at Clayton McCurvey, and I head the Industrial Automation practice at Clayton McCurvey.
Tim, I think you got muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Got it.
All right. Sorry about that. Somehow I muted myself. So a little background on our industrial automation practice. It's focused on Industry 4.0, and what we're trying to do with our clients is looking at freeing up cash flow, leveraging the R&D credits, tax planning strategies, aligning KPIs, helping you grow your business, and connecting you on issues that you most care about. And that's what today's Industrial Automation Roundtable is about. We've heard from many automation companies over the years, and the biggest thing that continues to be an issue is talent. So again, culture counts, and we really mean it. So the focus on today is, there's a talent gap. So we want to talk about why culture is important. Technology and innovations can only go so far. It always starts with people, and then putting those people in the right positions. And that's where, culture can come into, and our speakers today will talk a little bit more. Be intentional and adapt to the remote world. So we're going to talk a little bit more today about adapting to this remote world and how culture could be changing because of working more remotely. So a quote we wanted to start off today with is, of course, I think everyone has heard before: culture eats strategy for breakfast. So I'm great to introduce to you today our speakers. They're going to give a brief background and a little bit about their companies. We have Titus Crabb from Vertec, Heather Haas from Advisa, and Jose Rivera from CSIA. Titus, if you want to kick it off.
All right, thanks, Tim. And good morning, everyone from the desert in Arizona, where we're getting some rain today and a little break from the heat, which is nice. Thanks, Tim, and everyone at Clayton McCurvey for the invite here today. This is a topic I'm really passionate about, and I look forward to spending the next hour with you all. I'm the president of Vertec, as Tim mentioned, which is a control systems integration firm that I founded 17 years ago. I'm an engineer, and that's germane to the conversation today because control systems integration was my trade for 20 plus years before it became my business. So I'm a geek at heart, and that shapes Vertec's culture a lot. Vertec has 4 offices. We're in Southern California, Phoenix, Austin, and Nashville. And then we've got a sprinkling of fully remote team members around the country. We deliver MES solutions and traditional automation systems like most control systems integrators today. So as far as what is culture, I think culture is a set of common behaviors that your team exhibits when they're not being actively managed to do so. So you can kind of view culture as the soul of an organization, and the outcomes that you get on a project level are going to flow from that, whether good or bad. And sometimes there's a little bit of both in there, and the bad you have to actively manage for. So rising above your culture can be done, but it's just a heavier lift in your day-to-day operations. Our culture at Vertec has 2 key components. We try to create an environment that empowers our team to be masters of their craft and to deliver work that they're really proud to deliver. And then secondly, we actively encourage and require people to treat each other, our customers, our vendors, and people in their community with dignity and respect. That fosters a sense of trust and generally just makes things makes life better for everyone during the workday and project delivery. And then sort of a bonus culture piece for us, we like to joke around a lot. Company, what we do is super stressful, and laughter really is the best medicine for that. It gives people a chance to diffuse that stress and enjoy their workday. So again, Tim, thanks for the invite. Heather, Jose, I look forward to discussing this with you guys for the next hour or so.
Heather, if you want to go ahead and give a little background.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Heather Haas, and I'm president of Advisa. We are a leadership development company based in Indianapolis, and we really work to help our clients develop their people and develop intentional cultures that help them reach their business goals. So we provide software, training programs, strategic consulting, and all kinds of tools and programs that our clients are really tapping into to try to compete for top talent and improve hiring, engagement, and performance outcomes. We've been at this for about 35 years. My background, actually, I was a teacher and a principal before I jumped into the business world. So whereas Titus mentioned that he's a geek at heart, I think he said, I would say I'm a teacher at heart. So I love opportunities like this to have a conversation and share perspective. We have a team of 27 folks at Advisa who are consultants, client success professionals, trainers, IO psychologists, instructional designers. And I would say that the culture we've tried to build here is anchored in our core values. So that's a really important piece of how we define our culture and coach people to display behaviors that are in alignment with those values. More generally, I would point out, I think, a couple of other things about our culture. We are about as close to a results-only work environment as you can get, such that we're really clear about KPIs, really clear about goals and outcomes. And then we let people manage their time and energy and have an unlimited time off policy and a lot of flexibility so that people can really behave as adults and get their work done in a way that works for their life. So the clarity, I think, about outcomes and goals is really essential to offering a culture of flexibility and empowerment. And similar to Titus, we really try to care about one another. We try to inject a fair amount of fun and lightheartedness. We really believe that cultures should be positively magnetic, that the right people are going to be drawn into your organization if you're doing a good job perpetuating your intentional culture. And then people who don't fit are kind of repelled. So all of that, I guess, rolls into how I would define culture, which is really, how does it feel to work at your organization? What is that employee experience that someone feels when they come to work? And really, it even starts before you hire someone. It can start in the recruiting process, that first touch with your organization, all the way through to becoming an employee. And what does it feel like to work there every day? So I look forward to being with all of you and having a engaging conversation.
Great. Thank you, Heather. Jose, before you jump in here, I just did want a couple of housekeeping items as Jose's talking. There's some polls up. If you go there, you can answer those questions. We kind of want to see where people are saying and maybe move that into some of the discussion as well. And also questions. If any of you guys in the audience have questions related to something, we'd be happy to try to get those in there. The questions will, if somebody sees a question that they like, they can click on it too, and so it will up-level certain questions and different things like that. So, Jose, go ahead.
Thank you, Tim, and thanks for having me on this panel. It's a great opportunity. I'm Jose Rivera. I'm the CEO of CSIA, which is the Control System Integrators Association. I have led this organization for the past 6 years. Like Titus, I'm an engineer myself. I also got an MBA, and so I have worked on both sides. I have worked initially for very large companies, Siemens, Schneider Electric, Emerson Electric, and the word culture then means something different to what we have now with the smaller companies, normally for the system integration members, but it is as important, this whole concept of culture. I view it as a collection of customs, norms, and traditions between groups of people. And even when I was working with the big companies, it was multiple groups within those companies that would have slightly different cultures. When it comes to CSIA as an association, it's a slightly different story. I view it as like nobody's forced to be part of an association. Everything is volunteer based, including all the work that we do along the lines of committees. I call it an army of volunteers. So our culture is one about a lot of collaboration, a lot of sharing, and a lot of willingness to help our community out, even if they are competitors in the end, if you think about that, which I think it's unbelievable. It's like raising the level of the system integration industry. This is a very exciting topic. I have seen system integrators use culture as a competitive advantage, and I look forward to the panel today.
Great, Jose. Before we start the first question, a few things that I picked up as you guys were talking. I like the thing that Titus talked about with joking, having that environment, making sure that people understand that, right? And Heather, your point on core values that you made, I think is key. We here at Clayton McCurvey as well. I mean, we have 4, simple core values, but it really helps resonate our culture, right? Help others to succeed. Performance, can-do attitude, and then fun, right? You gotta throw that fun in there, and that's both with your clients and the people that you have, because that also builds your culture, I believe, as well. And then Jose, I like the little comment that you made on custom storms. That's an interesting little tidbit in there. I haven't really heard that term before, but it's neat. So Heather, to get started, as an organizations are coming back after the pandemic, how do you recommend they rekindle their work environment?
Yeah, it's something that all of us are facing. It's been somewhat unifying in a way that every organization has had to wrestle with. How are we going to come back? What are we coming back to? And what are the new work norms? So I think there's really 3 things that are key as you consider getting the band back together, so to speak. The first is empathy. People have been through a lot. And so whatever your culture was before, it's different now because people have changed. People have endured a great many things, and it's been hard. So I think leaders need to understand what it means to be empathetic and to listen to their employees and to understand their experience and their situations now. I think the second key is really about clarity. What are the new norms for how we're going to communicate, synchronously, asynchronously, if we're in a hybrid environment and still using technology platforms, et cetera. The clearer we can be about what are the expectations and what are our new goals and what is everybody's role in those new goals, that clarity is essential so that you're reducing people's anxiety about, am I working on the right things in the right way and communicating appropriately? And then the third thing I would offer is flexibility, which can only be possible if the clarity piece is there. But, people's work situations, as I've said, have changed. Their home life is different. And so organizations that are going to thrive into the future, I believe, have to be ready to be flexible and to rethink the work environment. You may have read, there's been a lot written lately about the Great Resignation is coming. A lot of people have rethought their priorities during the pandemic, and that has caused them to rethink how much of their life and time and talent they're willing to give to work. And in some cases, many people are opting to make different choices. So I think employers today have to get really serious about the flexibility, the listening, the empathy, and just being clear about who we are and where we're going in the future so that they can get their teams reconnected to those important things.
Yeah, that's some good information. I would say, the flexibility is key with the clarity, because we all talk about being flexible, but what does that mean? Because if we don't have the clarity, someone's thinking, okay, they get to work here and they're not getting their work done or something like that, right? So, I mean, that clarity is a key piece with that. Jose, any additional thoughts on that as well?
So on the topic of flexibility, I think that different employees at different stages in their career will have different requirements. So at CSIA, we regularly do these monthly surveys. And we did that, one of them about the return to the office. And for me, one of the surprising elements was that it was the younger generation who wanted to go back to the physical office. I would have thought that because they're younger, they're much more comfortable with working with technology, and they wanted to stay, working remotely, but they were the ones craving. And this I have now confirmed by having visited a few system integrators. So what I think is behind that is that if you are younger, you need a little more of this water cooler coaching, like Pierre on the next cubicle or the next office. And I think that, yes, we can be very clear, but we also need to realize that there are different groups that need a little bit of this hand holding, and we need to make room for that too.
Oh, great point. And Titus, any additional? You're on mute now too.
It had to happen at least once.
For each of us, I'm sure.
So I think that the piece I would add is on flexibility and communication. Both Heather, you knocked it out of the park with that answer. But we've done surveys within our own organization, really trying to understand where everybody's at, both from do they want to come back to work, how do they want to come back to work, timing, are they comfortable, all of that stuff, and done that multiple times, trying to make sure that we have a good pulse on what's going on. So I guess that's the listening part. And then from a flexibility part, I would encourage everybody to gear up to just be adaptable. What the answers are today are not going to be the answers 3 months, 6 months from now. And we actually just all read a book as a team called The Adaptation Challenge, and viewing it as an opportunity to have accelerated change in your organization for the good things that you want, because people they're fully open and geared up to change as a necessity right now. So it can be kind of a golden opportunity for us all.
No doubt. And always good information when we find out about different books as well. So I wrote that down, and that'll have to go onto my Audible list. Again, before we move on, I just wanted to make sure that, there are some poll questions in there. We did want you guys to, hopefully, all the participants out there, just answer those questions. It kind of gives us where people are at, currently, or what their organizations think, so that we can use that a little bit to, push the conversation in the right direction. So this next question here is really for Heather and Jose. We have all experienced and felt different work cultures. We know they exist, but what advice do you have for leaders who hope to influence or change their existing culture?
Hey, you want to take that one first, Jose?
Okay, thank you. What I would say is that you need to tie it all together in terms of what's your vision, what's your mission, and what's your strategy. And culture needs to support that. And if you are moving in a direction where your old culture is hindering you making progress, then those will be the cases where you need a lot of help, maybe external help. But most of the time, my experience at least, is it has been that there are very good things that you develop through culture, and you want to keep some of these elements moving forward into the future, right? And so it's always a matter of like being conscientious about what is it, that makes our culture good or bad or adequate or not adequate, and how is it fitting with what we want as an organization, as a company, achieve, and then try to move forward with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would add, I agree with everything Jose said. I would add that it's important when you're trying to change or shift your culture that you are explicit with your leaders that they are the culture carriers. And we teach that a lot in our programming, that, in addition to your day job of doing all the technical important things that you do, if you're a leader in the organization, you are also the ones who are bringing the mindsets and behaviors that align with the kind of culture that's required to achieve your business aims. So if your strategy has changed and you're becoming more entrepreneurial and aggressive in your market, and you're changing and adapting your solutions, likely you need to be explicit with your leaders so that they can coach their people about, we need some risk-taking behavior, and we need people to be failing faster or communicating in shorter cycles, whatever the case may be. I guess my pro tip for shifting culture is sometimes we talk in very esoteric conceptual terms about our business strategy and where we're headed, but the way you change a culture is actually way down at the behavioral level. So the more specific you can be about the types of behaviors that will foster and help you make the turn to your aspirational culture, the more effective you will be, and leaders understanding that you're the culture carriers, you're the ones modeling it and coaching and holding others accountable, and also celebrating examples of people displaying the behaviors that align with our intentional culture.
No, really, really good information. One of the things I think you're saying there too, of what I picked up is, if something is changing, if your vision, mission, and strategy are changing, you need to make sure you get that back in there, and then it helps you define what that culture is. Mm-hmm. And I think another important piece that I hear from, or at least from what I take from what Jose said as well, is, we talk about the talent gap, right? And having a easily definable how you present, your vision, mission, strategy, which then resonates your culture, makes it potentially easier for you to get people to resonate with what you're doing and be able to hire easier in that aspect.
Hey, Tim, can I just to throw in something real quick? I know this wasn't a question, but I think people have to have a realistic view too of how long it takes to change culture. Mm-hmm. We can't just go to a strategy meeting, set a new strategy and for the year, and all of a sudden expect people to get on board. I think in our company, consistency has been a key to develop the strength of the culture that we have. We were having a conversation about this a while back, and we're using the analogy of growing a tree, and the culture is your tree. And you can only prune so many limbs every year with a long-term vision of what you want that tree to look like. But it takes years sometimes to really develop a strong culture. So if you're changing it every year, you're just going to wind up with chaos.
Yep.
For sure. I think that's a great point. But it is interesting. I do see going forward, especially in this new work environment, right? Culture is potentially changing a little bit in how they have to grow into it, right? Mm-hmm. So All right. So the next question, Titus, though, this one's set for you, and then the panelists can also chime in. But how do you maintain a unified culture across multiple offices and the home-based employees? And I put in here any specific examples of things you do or have seen done for this.
Yeah. So one of the most important things that we did as we grew, we had a really core culture in our Phoenix office, which was our first office. And when we grew, we purposely took someone that really bought into our culture and put them in that new office. So we called it our sourdough starter, but it had that piece there to germinate and grow the culture. As we hired, we do a lot of things with our hiring practices to make sure we get the right people on board in the first place, which is probably a longer discussion. But as far as the remote, keeping everything together, we did start to see that we had some siloing going on. Things would start to just grow in a different path in the different offices. And honestly, COVID was one of the best things that ever happened for us, because we took some things that were like, we had a bagel meeting every Friday morning in our Phoenix office, and we tried all kinds of stuff to get that to include all the offices, and it just never worked. And we switched it to being a fully virtual meeting, and we've got 77, I think, total employees right now. And every Friday morning, we have at least 60 of them on that, bagel meeting, which is basic announcements, who did what this week, and then we have a dad joke section at the end. Where, which is the humor part. So those kinds of things are key for us. So anything that you can do to provide cross geography interaction with people. Leadership is key. If your leader doesn't buy into it, that they're not going to, Heather, I think you mentioned this, but it has to flow for me. I have to have those managers on board with what I want for the culture. Some specific things, Tim, the bagel meeting, we do this thing called Programmers Pints, which used to actually involve a real pint of beer, but now it's virtual. So we have one of our technical people do basically a little webinar about every third Friday or so for everyone. We do role-based meetings. So we have project manager meetings, technical lead meetings, SCADA meetings, again, across the whole company. I visit every office at least once a quarter. We do a leadership retreat every year. We're super proud of our Christmas party. We fly everybody into Phoenix, including their significant other, every year, put them up in a hotel, and we have a big bash, which gives people an opportunity to meet in 3D. So anything that connects people across the company is, and one last thing I would add, beware of technology traps. Technology does not solve culture problems, and we know that from experience. Technology can aid in the implementation of things, but if you think you're going to get Microsoft Viva or Facebook Workplace or something, and you're suddenly going to have a great culture, it's just a tool. It's not your culture.
Yeah. Heather, any thoughts on that? You deal with companies, I'm sure, that have multiple offices, things like that. Any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think training, leadership development is one of the actually most effective ways to transform and get alignment. Because if your leaders are on the same page and they understand the importance of the bagel meeting, or the importance of incorporating some fun dad joke, whatever the things are, if those are important things that need to be replicated across different locations and offices, you've got to train those managers and leaders in those important elements so that they can perpetuate them. I think the other thing that's really critical is what I would call over communication. If you feel like you're communicating too much about the cultural elements or the important priorities, et cetera, you're probably doing it just about enough. especially now that we're all distributed. We've got multiple locations. We're coming back. We're coming and going different platforms. I continually coach our clients that communication is really the name of the game, and communication isn't just one way. So how are you creating opportunities for two-way communication and checkpoints to ensure for understanding and alignment? We tend to make a lot of assumptions, especially in distributed companies with different locations. We assume that because we sent the email, everybody's on board. Everybody's not on board, and in many cases, not everybody even read your email. So how do you have kind of multiple layers of communication to ensure that understanding and alignment have really occurred?
Tim, if I could get at one example from a system integrator that I visited before COVID, way before COVID. So they had remote workers because these were workers that didn't want to relocate, and the company was totally open to it. But they recognized that they needed to ensure, a shared culture. And so similar to what Titus referred to as this bagel meeting, they would have regular meetings where they would provide updates. And if there was something to celebrate, and this is, I think, the key point that I'm trying to make, they made sure that those that were remote also got to celebrate. So if they had a pizza party to celebrate, like a big project conclusion, they would send pizza to those to their homes, remotely, such that everybody felt like we are all celebrating this. I felt this was a great idea. I think that now that people are returning and most likely companies will be more flexible, there will be this need of like making sure that those that are remote still feel part of the team, and like that to me was a big takeaway. And one last one from a different system integrator. They have I don't know how many offices. Let's say 5 offices. So in the kitchen area, they had those 5 monitors on a live camera connected to their other locations, dining area. So throughout the day. So like this would be totally casual. Hey, interacting with somebody that just happened to be in the kitchen area in the, I don't know, Denver office, Arizona office, whatever. It was totally casual, but I think just reminding everybody we are a company that is located in multiple areas.
Yeah, no, I really like that last one with the monitors. I think that's a great idea, because as you were, in those areas going to get something and you happen to see someone else, you get a chance to say hi and have that personal touch. I think that, and that's, to me, one of the biggest things that, I miss. I don't just impromptu, Zoom someone, right? You end up, when I'm in the office, you show up and you go grab a coffee, and then you do the water cooler talk. And then that's, one of the biggest things that you kind of miss from being all remote and different things. But there was something, now I just lost my train of thought, but there was one other thing that I wanted to point out as you were talking about that, but it will come to me in a minute. So we'll go ahead and kind of move on to the next one. So this is for all of you, and I'll let Jose start this one. What role does culture play in strategic planning?
So this brings me back to what I said at the very beginning. I mean, culture supports your strategy, right? And so if you're now planning and your plan is to change, to go in a particular direction, your culture needs to support that. So in the example that Heather gave is, if you're deciding to become more entrepreneurial, and that is going to be a big part of your strategy, now you need to encourage this new way of thinking and acting. And now you need to think about, well, do you want the entire company to be like that? Or do you want to have a group within your company to take the lead? All these different things are part of what you should be planning for. So it is totally should be part of your strategic planning process, the cultural element.
Heather, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I would just say, too, that after the plan and the goals and the metrics are all in place, oftentimes, our team will come in and sit with an executive team and engage them in, okay, what does this new strategy mean for your culture? So I would just underscore that you have to dedicate time and conversation to the culture elements. And to Titus's point, you don't change cultures overnight. And there should always be some enduring elements that withstand the test of time, which is why I'm so, I think it's so important to anchor to your core values. Your core values are going to be pretty enduring over time. Your strategy may change, and that may create some subtle shifts or even some significant shifts, but you've got that, hopefully that foundation built for what does it mean and what does it feel like to work here. And then any kind of changes in behaviors relative to your new strategy, you're tackling that and you're naming that explicitly. Hey, we've got to make some changes. And here's why, and here's what that means for this team or for all of us, whatever the case may be. But I think a lot of times I've observed that leadership teams can be really good at the X's and O's, the strategy pieces, and they dedicate the time and they even invest money in facilitators to do that. But then they just skip over or neglect the people piece, the cultural piece. And in our experience, that's what tends to sink strategies, just like the Drucker quote. We don't have people ready and they don't know what they're supposed to do differently as a result of the strategy, and potentially we haven't surrounded them with the support and the structures, et cetera, to support the dramatic change that maybe the organization is taking on.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the point, talking about what Titus said earlier too, of culture's got to change over time. If your strategy all of a sudden completely shifted, it could cause a really big struggle with culture. And therefore, getting back to that quote, it's important to understand, what you were saying earlier too about more risk taking or different things like that, right? That's a change in culture. And if strategy is going that way, we got to work together, and find out how we get people moving in that direction little by little, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. Titus, you talked about earlier that you do, annual strategic planning. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's part of our initial first half day. We spend, this is going to sound pretty like the academic answer, but we actually really do this. We spend our first half a day talking through our core values, our mission, and our vision. And really take a look at, do these still apply? Is this still who we are? If it's not, so it becomes a foundational piece for the rest of the meeting, to remind us of who we are. And then to a degree, we view that as a constraint on where we can go. And I think we've built a really flexible culture that has allowed us to do a lot of really cool things. But, I think that it guides our decision-making process more than figuring out what kind of new business we want to get into and then figure out how we're going to change our team to support that.
Yeah, no, good point. All right. Moving on to the next one. Again, this one's one for everyone. How integral is culture to your brand as a company? And is culture an asset for business development for your company, or in general? Titus, you want to lead on that one?
So we, our branding is very geek oriented, humor oriented, and we have this word, we've used this phrase world class for forever. It's in our mission, it's in our vision. And so those are kind of three key pieces to our brand image. And it really does help us. I'm sure all the integrators in this call would totally 100% agree with me here. It's really hard to convince somebody to give you an automation project. Incumbents almost always win because it's a huge trust sale. What we do is very almost abstract. you can see the building going up, you can see the plumbing going in, but that controls guy is going to show up at the very last minute, and your whole project hinges on whether he actually did what he's supposed to do or not. So the trust factor is a big deal. And when we appear human, you get to see that little bit further down the path with trust. And then when we tack on top of that, this whole idea of being world class and masters of our craft and excellence, it comes out in how we do our proposals. We spend lots of extra time in that. So I guess the point I'm getting at here is it permeates our brand image, and it permeates how we go to market during the proposal process. And it absolutely helps us, without giving away too much more secret sauce there. We find ourselves usually in the it's ours to lose situation in the projects that we decide to go after.
Heather or Jose?
So at CSA, collaboration is a cornerstone. And so I think that you can test whether this is just like a slogan or like something you put on a PowerPoint, or whether you live it. And very often you will have members saying this thing about, at CSIA, you share one idea, you take 10 with you, right? And so this has been from the very beginning of CSIA. This was like how it started, and it convinced the founding members to share, to help each other out, and that's how our best practices were created, etc. But my point here is that absolutely, if you are living, your members or your company employees are providing proof of your culture, it's the most creative and like credible source. And in our case, this is fundamental as an association. I said it again, I'll say it again. It's all volunteers. You don't have to be part of this. You're not earning a salary. As a matter of fact, you're paying to be a member, right? And so if you see that reflected, it'll be easier for you to join and be participant and share from the very beginning.
I think one of the things, once I've gotten into, learning more about the CSIA organization, was that collaboration is there for sure. That, one of the big things that you guys do, which I've never seen at an association as much, is these peer groups that you guys, there's a lot of peer groups that are out there, different things, Vistage type stuff, but you guys have done it within, CSIA, and people get together and form them and share ideas, which helps, continue to have that growth out there for all the different, companies. So very, very good.
One quick thing I would add on this idea of branding is that I also think it's absolutely essential today that companies are considering their employer brand. And as as people are moving and shifting around with their jobs and their careers, and it's becoming ever more competitive for talent, your culture is really the primary tool that you're going to be able to leverage to reach the kinds of employees, the kinds of talent that you need to grow your company. So getting really smart and engaging your marketing team in broadcasting in the right ways what your employer brand is. I mean, of course, as Titus and Jose shared, it's incredibly helpful in winning customers, but we also need to win talent. And so to me, what I'm seeing is a lot of the younger generation workers, more than anything, they're interviewing you to see if your corporate culture includes the things that are important to them, like flexibility, like development. Are you going to help me grow my skills and career? Does this organization have a heart and a mission that's bigger than just generating profit for shareholders? Does this organization pay attention to things like diversity, equity, inclusion? These are the things that are important to many younger generation people who are entering the workforce. And as 10,000 boomers continue to retire every day, we've got to really be mindful of our culture needs to try to solder connections with that up and coming high potential talent, so that it's working for us as a recruiting tool as much as it is our culture is magnetic in terms of retention. It's both.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And talking about brand, our little symbol is the and sign, right? We can do your tax returns, but we can also do more. And one of those things is things like this, being able to get to our clients and talk about things that they're dealing with, and bringing on, experts and thought leaders like you guys for no cost type of thing. It's just in that added value that you're looking at. And, that's what we found has, been very positive for us to, long term have growth in our organization as well. And, really trying to make sure, if our companies are doing better and we're helping them, right, they're happier to pay some of the fees and different things. So I think that's, but to that same extent, not trying to just overdrive shareholder value and different things like that. I think that's very important.
Tim, if you let me, every year at CSA, we have these awards. And one of the awards is about social responsibility. And so every year we get to see, what this particular company who won it has been doing on those fronts. And this year, the winner was sharing how they engage in their different activities that, to the point of Heather, this is not related to profits. But what he was sharing is that because it allows them to establish this emotional link with employees because they're driving towards a higher cost, it creates, a very strong cultural tie, and it's like a total win, right? So what he said that was like that stuck in my head, which is like it needs to be natural. You really need to believe it. It cannot be just like a facade that you just set up to attract talent. I mean, you need to live it, and this is an effort that pays them off within their culture, but also to attract the newer generation who cares oftentimes more about these things.
Yeah, no, another great point. I did remember what I was going to say a while back. We were talking about different cultures and different things. During our busy time, we always would bring in food or something on a few different days. So one of the things that we ended up doing, during busy season was everybody in the organization got a $50 Grubhub that they could spend during the week or different things like that. So, those little things, I think a lot of people really thought that was, kind of cool and different things. One of the questions in the poll was, how has your company's culture changed during the pandemic? Has it stayed the same, worsened, and improved? And about 30% of the people said it worsened. Heather, if people are, thinking that culture has worsened, what are some of the things that they might be able to do to try to help re-engage or rectify that?
I think step one is ask and listen. You want to really understand when people have shared in whatever format, be that a survey or informally, that culture has worsened. What does that mean? In what way has it gotten worse? And I think it's a golden opportunity to then flip it to, okay, so how might we make it better? If we could reimagine work, we have this amazing chance to come back better than before. And so I really am an advocate for engaging your team in solving the most pressing challenges in front of the organization. Sometimes I think as leaders, we think we have to have all the answers. Well, guess what? All of us leaders, we've just been through an experience that none of us were prepared for. And we all had to confront our own, the reality that we don't have all the answers, and it's okay. So I would say, let's try to understand, why is it worse? How might we make it better together? And then the leader's job then is to make a game plan and get really intentional about the next steps that might flow from that conversation, so that you're building trust with people, because they're seeing that you're taking action to make things better. We're not going to make it perfect, and we're not going to change everything overnight. But people, actually, be surprised, will extend a tremendous amount of grace to their leaders who are listening, who are trying, and who are, communicating with consistency about here's what we're doing, here's how it's going, and keeping people apprised of progress and challenges along the way.
Yeah. Any additional thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, it goes back to leadership and the listening piece. As engineers, we tend to rely on SurveyMonkey or something, which is a great tool for aggregating data, but it's not communication. And so making sure that you are in, like regular one-to-ones, like the basics of management that tend to fall away because you're too busy doing other things. And, we tell our managers that's the most important thing you can be doing is having those phone calls and understanding where people are at, especially because you don't see them in the office. Mm-hmm. So you might not hear about that thing that happened to their child, or, there may be, whatever there is going on in their life that's affecting their work. You have to get really creative to figure out what's going on and not pry into people's personal lives, but you have to care, and you can't care if you don't know. Mm-hmm. So I would agree with that piece. One piece about delegating culture, Heather, you kind of mentioned, we created a thing about 4 years ago called Culture Club. And on Microsoft Teams, the logo for that is Boy George. Yeah. So, just to add some humor to it. But those are people that have helped us navigate through COVID, through the pandemic. So they're the leaders in our company, and they're truly, they're not managers, but they're leaders for our culture. And they've done some great work adapting things we did before to the new reality that we were facing, and coming up with new things and ways to tie people together. So it doesn't have to all be your idea, as a leader, and it probably shouldn't be. Let people engage with each other too, and give them the freedom to do that.
So in that, before you get there, Jose, I'll let you jump in. But with that Culture Club, is it all levels that are kind of involved, from first year engineers up to some of the managers? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We probably do need to recruit an entry level into that. It started out, it had a couple of entry levels in it, but they've since, they're 3 years or so into their careers now. But it is all levels, and only one management level person. Just on purpose, like, we probably would kill the vibe,
Well, it wouldn't be as open, I think, right? Sometimes it would, and I think what you're saying, that club sounds like a really good idea, because I think, as Heather was talking about earlier, and I think you've all said it, it's this flexibility and understanding where they are and what they really want, right? And I think that club potentially helps with some of that, gets them more engaged, and then seeing a little bit more of the stuff. I know we just did some surveys as well, and it was very interesting of what our managers and below basically said about coming back to the office, vaccines, all this other stuff. And it's I see a lot of diversity in that, which is you always think, oh, we're all thinking the same way, right? But that really is an eye opener, and gets you kind of your mind going about, okay, what do you need to do? Sorry about that, Jose. Go ahead. And
no problem. What I wanted to say is that this pandemic was dramatic, and at the very beginning it was frightful, changes, fear, all these different things, right? But now we're at this stage of, like, we survived it, for the most part, and now we're getting a canvas, a blank canvas that we can use to redesign it, or design whatever we want it, and so we may not know exactly what we want, but I think that if we use this as an opportunity to go intentionally and recognizing that this allows us to do things differently, right? And so have this Culture Club, have these interviews, have these surveys, and just keep at it. this should be exciting, honestly. Like oftentimes we say like we cannot do this because we've never done this because all these other reasons. Right now, it's like one of those opportunities where yes, we can make it different, very different if we want to.
So great, Jose. So we got about 5 minutes left. I kind of wanted to roll this question, and you could final thought this as well. Do you guys feel like there is a tangible ROI for investing in a strong, vibrant culture? And kind of give your final thoughts and answer to that question. Titus, if you want to start it off.
Yeah, I think that there is. It might be really difficult to put a dollar figure to it, but there's the obvious ones like focusing on a healthy workplace can reduce your benefits costs, and that's a part of culture. Cost of recruiting and onboarding. If you can improve your retention numbers, that's a huge cost, especially in a time like now with talent being difficult to find and acquire. But I think that there's some intangibles as well that do directly affect your bottom line. The Speed of Trust is a good book by Covey, and that sort of describes that whole intangible. That if you've ever tried to move a sofa with somebody that you don't think, what Speed of Trust is talking about. It's way easier with someone that thinks like you do, and that's what culture does. It binds people together, gets them all thinking along the same lines for delivery of the product that you're trying to deliver. So that has efficiency gains as well. I always, I understand the question. I hate thinking about culture in terms of ROI, and I guess my last thing to say here is I think that as business leaders, we have a huge opportunity and responsibility to care for the people that work for us. And there's a ripple effect that goes out from that to their families and the people that they interact with. And we can be a huge positive change element in society just by creating environments that, we don't have to have some huge noble cause for our company. Our noble cause can be 77 people that get to go home and be great parents, great members of their community because their work environment supports them.
Well, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. Heather?
I completely agree. Simon Sinek just put out a book called The Infinite Game, where he talks about having this infinite mindset, which is exactly what Titus was just describing. Investing in culture is more than just doing the things that'll help us meet our business and profit objectives. It's much bigger than that. I completely agree. Most of us spend the majority of our time at work. So if we can play a direct role in creating an environment where people are cared for and heard and understood, and where people can grow their confidence and capabilities, wow, that's having an incredible impact on a human, their family, the community, the world. So, it might sound kind of lofty and unrealistic, but I actually believe it's true. And any of the folks listening, if you can remember a time when you didn't work in a healthy work culture and you had to show up every day and kind of do battle with everything that comes with that, you know the personal ROI of organizations and working somewhere where they care about people and they try their best to create that positive and nurturing work environment where we can all be the best version of ourselves.
Great. Jose, final thought?
Yeah, I need to agree, and I will just add this part, this part, which is like at the very bit of the ending part of Heather, this whole, you can translate into motivation, right? Motivation is something that it's hard to measure, but if you're motivated, you're willing to give your best, you're excited. The more you do, the more you get excited, right? And our works are not works that are measured by how many boxes did you close, how many pieces did you bend. It's not, it is all ideas. It is like programming. This is all mindset. And if the mind is motivated, you'll be able to achieve so much more than if you're not. And a healthy culture helps build a healthy work environment. And yes, it will have a positive result. It's hard to measure though. So no square root of whatever parameters, which is what we engineers want to have, okay? But it's not so easy to measure.
Yeah. Well, guys, I really appreciate the time. Titus, Jose, Heather, thanks for joining us on our initial industrial automation roundtable. As you can see, this is a series of 3. We'll be doing another one, Building a Winning Team, August 25th, and Retain, Engage, and Reward, August 27th. So please, hopefully you can join us there again. And if there's any additional questions or anything else at the end, that people want to send out, feel free to email me and we can discuss. So thanks again, everyone, and really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.